We aspire to be the leading client-centric universal trade bank by advancing revolutionized and value-added products and services. We provide an innovative and comprehensive range of trade finance instruments tailored to mitigate our clients' credit risks and preserve the necessary flexibility to navigate complex cross-border transactions.
How do you create a culture of innovation within your organization?
Innovation comes in a number of different forms. We have technology innovation here, and we partner with a very specific company well versed in understanding the needs of a small company like us. We went out to the market. We tried to find an application which would serve our particular needs. What we found was many applications where you have to adapt your organization to the software. The approach we took was involving ourselves very heavily in partnership with a technology-savvy company to create the software, to create the application, the workflow and the technology through the whole of the trade flow to enable, and we were able to apply their technology exactly to the way we work. Moving on from that, on a traditional piece of software, you would expect changes to take place perhaps within a 6-month or a year period, according to how many people want to standardize change. Here we can be extremely flexible and comprehensive, and once we suggest a change, that's put into position within a few days. So we can be very, very fast in not only applying changes which come up from the regulatory point of view, but adapting to the way we need to work for our changing market as well.
Our international trade specialists ensure clients leverage our bank's financial resources, technology, and global banking network to manage and build their international businesses.
How are you making the human element, the human touch, still relevant?
Humans in the trade finance business are absolutely key. Automating the trade finance process at the moment is one where it's been found to be very difficult because of the number of players in the ecosystem. There are freight forwarders, shippers, transport companies, people at shipping, the people who do the documents themselves, customs. So within them, there is always a human element today going on. We even know when we're hearing discussions regarding blockchain, that apparently it's going to be a universal panacea, but all it's going to do is speed up a process, but humans still need to be involved in either the creation or the movement of the goods, etc. One thing we're doing with technology though, is looking at the access to technology for the SMEs and other corporates who want to use trade finance services. So how can they do that? Well, the first way is we're looking at introduction of mobile applications. So rather than needing a laptop or a set office to do that, being able to create the documents, follow the documents, settle the documents using a mobile phone application, a secured application, again on tablet as well. So we're not looking at what you might call a call center way of doing things where you're hearing an automated procedure or a pop-up which is somebody you're not actually talking to, an auto bot. We're talking about real people in the office answering real questions with real customers.
Simplex, our patented state-of-the-art software solution, the future of global trade. Simplex caters for all needs of a trade finance service provider.
You've recently released your new platform, Simplex. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, Simplex, as the name implies, is simple export. And that's what we're looking at. Documents which are concerning the whole of the import and export process, right from the beginning when somebody issues an invoice, somebody wants to buy something effectively. And the invoices will contain a lot of information about conditions, about the buyer and seller addresses, about how the shipment is going to take place, whether it's by ship, by air, by road, by rail, etc. But also all about the condition of the goods themselves. And that process of actually processing that and taking it right through to the point of creating a SWIFT message at the end of that to be sent to a beneficiary bank is contained within the system. What we did, again, I mentioned previously that we couldn't find a system which did the process in the way we needed it to work. So this we've adapted in such a way and created that it has the full workflow all the way through, from the very first gathering of that data, aligning that document inside a transaction, holding all the documents that you receive from that transaction, so in scanned form, and then the whole of the process, what happens next? from the point of view of issuing an invoice to the buyer, then doing the indemnity documents, all the side letters, all the agreements that they have to have signed off, gathering all their KYC information from the directors, all the financial information from CreditSafe and other providers of financial information on company performance, and then to the point of receiving funds, so the fee management side of it, receiving those funds from the applicant and then releasing the documents and the SWIFT message to the beneficiary. So it handles the whole of that particular flow in a very simple, easy, cloud-based method.
So you mentioned you're working within the cloud. Can you tell us what that's brought to your Exim Bank?
Very first one we see is that we've opened a new office in St. Lucia. So what's happening is that the staff there are able to have a local connectivity into an application which is managed, maintained, supervised from the offices here. So it's ready to go immediately from that point of view without having to have a local implementation for them. So we're dealing with a number of third world countries when we're doing these particular instruments where there is complexity of transport and also finding out true identity and authenticity of people. In order to prove that, this Selfify application takes the selfie and then does a comparison against the passport. So we can be assured that the director is a bona fide director, and once that is also certified physically on their passport PDF that they send us, we can be assured they truly are the people they say they are. Our Simplex software, as I mentioned, was as a result of a partnership with a tech-savvy company. That company is SyncGo, and what they're also doing is creating our mobile applications and looking towards the tablet-based application as well.
The complexity and importance of the trade finance continues to grow, demanding advanced KYC, DD, AML, identity assurance, and trust. The Cybos conference helps to build an understanding of the forces impacting the financial community.
So what can we expect to hear from you in the future?
Well, let's look at Cybos first of all coming up, where we're going to have probably one of the largest exhibition stands for a company of our size. We have a team of 7 people going, and one of the things we'll be highlighting there is obviously the Simplex platform, which we'll be commercializing. We will be also looking at information regarding St. Lucia as our new head office there, and also how we interact with different types of instruments, which are letters of credit, standby letters of credit, performance bonds, and bank guarantees. So a very specific model of business that we're doing. So we're certainly not in payments, in funds, securities, FX, travelers checks, or what a traditional high street bank will be involved in. So Cybos for us is very important also in building relationships with other banks, so that if our customers require goods or services or the payment for those to go to their beneficiary or the seller, then we're able to directly correspond with that bank. And it's about building the relationships, networking, talking about blockchain, how that can affect trade finance in the future. So using it not only for networking, but as a great learning experience as well.
Emerging themes. We at Euro Exim Bank are continuously seeking novelty in banking. We ensure that we are updated with the new trends of global banking.
One of the big buzzwords we're hearing at the moment is the move to open banking. Can you tell us how you guys are looking at opening up APIs or looking at using any third-party developers?
We'll look at third parties. I mean, we're small enough to make sure that we have a very unique system to our particular way of working. Open banking will provide obviously aggregation across different banks and the ability to look at total balances or restricted balances, perhaps geographically, nationally, and across individual accounts. What we're concerned with here is a very specific area of the financial sector, and that's the movement of financial information concerning a trade which is going to result in delivery of goods and services. So from an open banking point of view, it's not quite in the same field. However, what we would do if we're approached is provide links to our system with APIs as well. So we become part of an integrated total solution.
We offer our services to corporate entities that are verified as legitimate establishments by carrying out a thorough verification process. We practice high standards and we invite new regulations with open arms.
So with new technologies brings new challenges, one of which is obviously the new regulations coming in next year. Can you tell us how you're looking at these regulations, PSD2, GDPR, MiFID II, and looking at them in a positive light rather than as a challenge?
Certainly. We're a small organisation here with our speciality being in the trade finance area. Some of the new regulations you mentioned don't apply to us today. However, what we do, we purposefully look at those regulations and see if there is a possibility in the countries that we're working in that they might be applicable at that time. So we've ramped up our legal team here and our compliance teams to make sure that we're fully cognizant of those particular changes taking place, and where things are in place, if there are changes taking place, we need to look at those on a regular basis and then implement that within the software that we have as well. What we've done also is become one of the first users in the UK of a piece of software which handles our due diligence. Within that software, there is an AI element to it. Now everybody talks about artificial intelligence taking over from the way all the roles that people have. What we've done is to look at the AI element of that so that it would do the repetitive work that an operator would have done, which then gives us more time to analyze the results of that. So it's actually doing the automation and using the intelligence of a search that you would have done across multiple data sources, aggregating those data sources, and then we take an informed view about the responses that have come from that piece of software. And what we found from that, from the very first time we used it, we were able to signal an alert we wouldn't have found perhaps on another system, or would have taken a long time to find, which then enabled us to stop the transaction. And that way we would mitigate our risk and also not do that particular transaction. We wouldn't take our fees, but it's really saved us as an organisation and the buyer and the seller in that particular transaction. Because if it's gone wrong in some way and you can't trust the buyer to pay, then that's very, very useful information for the seller, because their goods will be transferred and they're going to sit in a warehouse somewhere and never be paid for them, and they will have charges. And from our side, it means that there won't be a legal implication to the way they're working.
Exim Bank always gives immense value to the human aspect and greatly believe in giving back to the community. We consider corporate social responsibility as a highly influential concept to make a difference in the world we live in.
So can you tell us your organisation's approach to helping out others and the CSR within your organisation?
Absolutely. We realise as a very small company, and it started off almost like a family business as well, extending that family ethos throughout the things we do and to charitable works internationally. Recently, we had a concert we were sponsoring a concert in the UK in the Cadogan Hall. 800 people were there, and we were supporting the Cerebral Palsy Association of St Lucia. The ambassador was also there, and it's all part of being a good corporate citizen. So we made a very large charitable contribution then. And next week we have another concert taking place. We've got our colleagues who is a Bollywood star who is doing a special concert, and the proceeds from that will be going with a charitable contribution, this time to the Sparkle organisation, which helps families and those suffering from Down syndrome in particular with speech therapy and language therapy. And that process will allow that organisation to help the children actually become more self-assured and to give them great self-esteem, to bring them up to a level where they feel like a positive contributor to society as well moving forward.
Find out more about Exim Bank's capabilities facilitating global trade, our new regulated head office in St Lucia. Our new office in the Caribbean boasts the best of the best.
Can you tell us what that's going to bring to Exim Bank, especially when dealing with the international markets?
Absolutely. St Lucia was a logical choice for us for a number of reasons. The first one is it's a highly compliant, regulated area with a very, very strong regulatory authority there who go to great lengths to ensure that any financial organisation has longevity, has provenance, has accounts and capability of sustaining its obligations, but more than that, to make sure there is physical presence there and to ensure that the reputation of the financial services industry there is maintained as highly as possible. What does that bring? First of all, we are aware, acutely aware, that the Caribbean islands are normally net importers of goods and services. So there's no car industry, there's no great crops industry apart from sugar, bananas, etc. So whilst we're all familiar with the traditional crops coming from there, everything else, almost everything else, is imported. So there's a huge number throughout the Caribbean region where we can now provide services to those companies, the SMEs, who are doing the import of goods and services there.
Exim Bank Limited is committed to the prevention of financial crime and has adopted procedures to detect and deter adverse activities.
Where do you see the financial industry heading in the next few years?
I see mergers, acquisitions, a restriction of business in many areas, de-risking taking place as well, a higher incidence of cyber threats, and also a higher cost of being in a position to attack those threats as well. More diverse markets and very much more sophisticated criminals trying to not only hack the system, but trying to hide the identity and try to extract money by different ways, like malware, for example. So banks have got to be prepared to make huge investments, look at the resource they have, in order to protect themselves in a much greater way than they had before. As they say, criminals attack where the money is. So large banks will in particular be suspect as far as, and very much targeted by those types of criminals. I think from the position where we are today, we are perhaps not the same target, but we have to be wary and we have to be very mindful of the type of attacks, the sophistication of attacks, the type of people sitting who are purposefully attacks, nation states, for example, coming after financial institutions. But remembering our volume of traffic, our overall revenue is nowhere near that of a high street bank. We'd like it to be. That means we have to ensure and guarantee that our internal processes are safe, secure, guarded, reliable and guaranteed. And if we can do that, that's, I think, one area of great concern to us. The next one is the increased regulation and the cost which is still going to go around that. Unfortunately, markets today, when there's a blip in the market, there's a problem with a particular vendor or a particular financial institution, what comes down afterwards is very restrictive regulation that affects the whole industry. So perhaps the actions of one affect the actions and the provenance of many. And that's what's happening with regulation, which means everybody has to apply the same new techniques and revenue and resource expenditure to make sure you become compliant because of something that's happened in perhaps a smaller element somewhere else. Now this can also be regional, it could be international as well. So we have to be mindful of those particular things and look at our industry in particular and say, does it apply to us? What do we have to apply today? Where do we have to go in the future with this, or do we just keep a watching brief on it? We are very much taking a watching brief on many of these things, but again, purposefully implementing whatever is necessary from a regulatory compliance point of view, due diligence, KYC, AML, PEP, etc., to ensure that we're safe and we're safeguarded from the new type of threats which are out in the market.
Now, one of the big changes as well that we're seeing is the incredible shift to digital channels. Can you tell us, because you work with SMEs in various different countries around the world, what's that been like for you and what can we expect to see in a digital way from you guys in the future?
I think the first one for digital is, again, the mobile application we're putting in. The mobile application. I think that's going to be incredibly powerful for smaller companies, but also to provide access through the main channels, which are laptop, desktop, etc., traditional channels there. But also whether that's actually trusted because of the sophistication and the complexity of the instruments in which we're dealing. As an example, if you're dealing with a payment instruction, you have somebody who's remitting funds, you need a sort code, you need an account number, an amount, credit or debit, go. Here we're looking at many, many different fields of information, and the absence of information in those fields can be as critical as the inclusion of that. They're very complex to look at, and the mobile phone really is not the greatest medium to view that type of transaction. Tablets are certainly better, but from the payment instruction side, which comes after the submission of the instrument itself, certainly mobile is useful. But reviewing it on a tablet and being able to look at the complete document and its workflow are something which can be very easily put together. And that's where we're planning to be in the very, very near future.
Flexibility, convenience, security, and trusted transaction flow. Contact Exim Bank and begin your trade finance journey with ease.